Okay, let's talk about something wild. What if your local economy wasn't built on, debt, but on potatoes? Seriously, or maybe solar power. Today, we're going to dive into this really fascinating model where money is backed by, well, real stuff.
So just imagine for a second, a local currency where its value isn't just a number on a screen. It's actually guaranteed by a real basket of potatoes, or maybe credits for solar energy from your neighbor's roof. This is a huge shift, right? We're talking about moving the whole foundation of money from this abstract idea of debt to actual real-world value you can see and touch. All right, here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll tackle the big problem with a lot of local currencies. Then we'll get into the solution, which is something called a commodity pool. We'll see how it works, look at local scale's take on it, and then zoom out for the bigger picture.
All right, Section 1, the local currency problem. Now, a lot of local currency systems, they're set up with the best intentions to boost local trade. But they often hit this fundamental snag, a problem that can send the whole thing into a downward spiral.
So what happens is this really unhealthy imbalance gets created. On one hand, you've got people, let's call them the surplus holders, who have a ton of these local credits, but there's just not enough stuff to spend them on locally. And on the other side, you have deficit holders who are racking up debts they can't possibly repay, which basically gives them every reason to just leave the system. It just gets stuck.
And this is where it all falls apart. Because when people can't actually use the currency, what happens? Trust just evaporates. Poof! So they give up on the whole local experiment and just go right back to using dollars or euros. The very thing that was supposed to strengthen the local economy ends up doing the exact opposite.
Okay, so that's the problem. Now for the solution, the commodity pool. Think of it as a liquidity anchor. What if you could anchor all that trust in something real, something tangible? Well, that's the whole idea here. It provides a rock-solid foundation for the currency.
So what exactly is a commodity pool? Well, at its heart, it's just a managed collective stash of locally produced goods. We're talking food, energy credits, even an hour of a plumber's time. So instead of your local money being backed by a government promise or some abstract debt, it's backed by an actual potato or a kilowatt hour of energy. That gives the currency real, tangible, intrinsic value. You can literally picture what it's worth.
All right, so how does this whole thing actually work? It sounds great on paper, but what are the nuts and bolts? It's actually a pretty straightforward three-step process. Let's walk through it.
Okay, step 1. You establish the pool. This is where local producers, farmers, craftspeople, you name it, they commit a small percentage of their real output, maybe like 2 to 5%. Step 2 is the dynamic exchange. This is cool. If you have too many credits, no big deal. You can redeem them for actual goods from the pool. And if the economy needs more money, new currency can be issued against the value of the stuff in the pool. And finally, step 3, replenish and reinvest. The pool keeps itself going through small fees and contributions, and it can even act like a commons reserve bank, funding new local projects. It's a complete circle.
Okay, so that's the theory, but let's see how this is being applied in the real world. A platform called Local Scale is actually building a whole regenerative engine based on this concept. This is where it gets really interesting.
So what Local Scale does is it connects all these different regenerative modules, things like Resource Hub for waste, Region Hub for soil, and Energy Hub for power. And the commodity pool? Well, it's the glue that holds the entire ecosystem together. Now, the system uses a really clever two-tier token model. You've got your local impact tokens, or LITs. These are issued for verified local actions, like, say, creating a ton of compost. Then you've got global impact tokens, or GITs, which are kind of like a meta token that lets you compare impact between different regions. But, and this is the absolute key, it's the commodity pools that provide the physical collateral, the real stuff, that gives these tokens their value and stability. This isn't just speculative crypto. This is something you can always redeem for real-world value. That's a game changer.
And when you put the two systems side by side, wow, the difference is stark. In the traditional system, value is backed by debt. With Local Scale, it's backed by real goods and services. A central bank controls liquidity with interest rates. Here, smart contracts manage the pool's elasticity. Inflation? Instead of just tightening the money supply, you can redeem currency for real stuff. And surpluses? They're not just taxed or hoarded. They get converted right back into the pool's value. It's just a fundamentally different, and I'd argue, much more grounded way of thinking about an economy.
Let's look at how this plays out in one of those hubs. Take Resource Hub, which is all about turning waste into something useful. Here, things like compost and soil credits become backing assets in the pool. I mean, think about that. Your community's waste literally becomes a financial foundation for your local economy. That's amazing. Okay, now what about Region Hub? This one's focused on ecosystem restoration. Here, the pool acts like a natural sink for any surplus currency floating around. So, any extra credits in the system get automatically converted into long-term assets like planting trees. It basically bakes funding for ecological health right into the system.
And then there's Energy Hub. Here, energy credits, kilowatt hours from local renewable sources, become a really stable commodity in the pool. This not only gives the currency a super reliable backing, but also directly funds new community solar projects. It's a win-win.
So let's make this super concrete. Take the Annecy bioregion as an example. The pool backing their local currency, which is called La Clarine, might contain, say, 10,000 kilos of potatoes, 2,000 kilowatt hours of solar energy credits, and 500 hours of carpentry or repair services. All of a sudden, the currency's value isn't just some abstract number, right? You can actually picture what it represents. You can picture the potatoes. Okay, let's zoom out. We've seen how all the pieces fit together. So what's the bigger picture? Why does all of this really matter? This is where we see why this model could be such a game changer.
Well, the core benefits are all beautifully interconnected. First, you get guaranteed liquidity for anyone holding the currency because it's always redeemable for real things. That builds real local economic resilience. Surpluses don't crash the system, they get automatically recycled into regeneration. All of this just skyrockets trust, which leads to wider adoption. And it protects against that currency flight we talked about at the very beginning. It solves the core problem.
And it all culminates in this incredible, logical, regenerative loop. Just follow the steps. Waste becomes soil. That soil then becomes food. The food becomes the bedrock of economic stability. That stability allows for regenerative investment. And that constant flow of liquidity becomes true community prosperity. It's a perfect circle. So that really leaves us with one final, powerful question to chew on. If we can actually design economies that are backed by the health of our own ecosystems, by our soil, our food, our clean energy, what else becomes possible? Seriously, just think about that for a moment. What could a future built on that kind of foundation really look like?